This is Boba Fett's Starship, and today, based on a patron suggestion, I'm going to be turning this set into a droid AAT. And Boba Fett is a character that I've featured on the channel quite a few times now. He's even my profile picture, but I think excluding tutorials, I have 8 videos based around him. But despite having 8 videos based around him, I still haven't made a completely original alternate build out of his Starship set. But that all changes today, because recently I asked my patrons for any of their alternate build ideas and suggestions that they might have had that they want me to try out. And one of them shot back with the idea of turning Boba Fett Slave 1 into a droid AAT. This set already has a large angled base very similar to the AAT, so you know it has the parts to accomplish the base. And then any leftover pieces that I don't use on the bottom, I'm sure I can use to build up the sides of the tank and then eventually out to that top cannon. But I didn't want to just make a regular AAT. While I do like that tank, I wanted to do something a little bit more unusual, something bigger. And my hunt for a bigger AAT led me to Season 1 of the Clone Wars. And if you remember, in Season 1 we were introduced to the Defoliator Tank. This thing is basically a war crime in the shape of a tank. It launches special rounds that eliminates all organic life in a set area but leaves the B-1 battle droids completely unharmed. So this is definitely a beast of a tank, and it's already a variant of the AAT, so I still think it falls in line with that original suggestion, just with a little bit of a twist. So with that idea in my head, I got to building, and it was a ton of trial and error. At one point, I got pretty scared that maybe I wasn't even going to be able to make an original alternate build out of this set, and I should just set it aside. But I knew I couldn't give up that easily, so with a little bit of inspiration and plenty more trial and error, I'm finally happy to introduce you to the Mandalorian Defoliator Tank. I've written up some pretty fitting lore behind this tank and how and why the Mandalorians decide to use it, but we're going to cover that later. For now, let's just dive into the features. And unlike many of my other builds, I can't really cover the exterior and then go inside because there's not much inside to cover, so we'll pretty much just cover this front to back. But first we'll take a good look going around so we can get used to its size and proportions. As we were going around the tank, some of you guys might have noticed that the profile and the shape of this is pretty similar to the original Slave 1. It has the very large but curved base at the bottom here, and then you do have the main body that angles up towards the top with one strut going out down the middle. Now obviously the cannon at the top isn't quite the same, but overall they have a pretty similar profile, and I bet I could have just built up the base of the Slave 1 and then gone from there and finished this alternate build. But then it really wouldn't have been much of an alternate build if I just built half the set regularly anyways. But let's go ahead and dive into the specifics of this, starting up at the front of this tank. And up at the front here, instead of a hatch like the original AAT, we now have a cockpit using that windscreen from the Slave 1. And I'm sorry about the lighting glare on that cockpit piece. We'll just go ahead and fold it up so we don't have to worry about it. But inside you can see we have Boba Fett as our driver, and then we have a little bit of details around him. We'll get him out so we can get a better look. Behind our driver there are a few extra lights or some sort of buttons, just some extra details to help fill out the cockpit. And then up at the front we have the actual controls for this tank. It's a little hard to get the angle, but I think you guys can see it well enough. Down the middle, we have that printed control panel piece. And then just on that right side, we have one joystick to help maneuver the tank. And with all that in there, you do have plenty of space for Boba Fett still wearing his backpack despite the buttons in the back. You can lean him a little further back and then bring down the cockpit windscreen, and he's ready to go and drive this tank in a battle. But just outside the cockpit, you can see I used quite a bit of slope and curved pieces to help build up the base and smooth it out leading into the main center body. And I did make use of the sticker sheet that this set has, but I put it on the original pieces, so if you're repurposing your already built Slave 1, you won't have to reapply or take off your stickers. But as we follow the slopes further down towards the back of the base, we do have a little bit of asymmetry on either side with these stripes down here. On this side, we have some light and dark green with that larger gray tile, and then on this side over here, we just have dark green with some black tiles. And then moving further down the base, we do run into a small section of greebling that's attached to these larger tubes on the side of the body, just using a bunch of miscellaneous pieces to make it look a little industrial and make it look like some piping is peeking out. And then just behind that greebling, we have some more slow pieces to help build up the backside that leads into these 2 fins that finishes out the base. And with the entire base covered, we can finally move further up on this tank and start moving into the main body. And as we move further into the main fuselage, we'll get a better look at the details and the features that the Defoliator has. On the sides of the body, mounted just beneath these side cannons, we have some small anti-personnel cannons to keep any ground troops at bay. You could of course use these larger side cannons, but in the event that you're already locked onto another vehicle with these, and you have any ground attackers approaching, you can take them out with these smaller anti-personnel cannons. But speaking of these larger side cannons, as you can see, I use these large slow pieces to help build out the arm that leads to the side cannons. And these are mostly made out of a variety of Technic pieces with one lightsaber hilt mixed in there. But despite only being made out of Technic pieces, I actually really like how these cannons turned out. And both side cannons can rotate 360 degrees, but the build is a little fragile because it's only attached by 2 studs on the side there. So you do have to be a little careful if you're spinning these around. You might end up knocking off the cannon. But with that side cannon reattached, we can take a better look at these side tube details. And these are on the Defoliator as well as the normal AAT. I'm not sure what purpose these large side tubes serve, but I wanted to work them in somehow using these larger sloping pieces. And I managed to do just that with that larger slope piece with a sticker on it, and then that small bit of greebling that we saw earlier when we were going around the base. And these are pretty fragile as well. They're only attached by one stud up at the top on this half-rounded plate thing here. I'm not sure what this piece is called. But I decided to use this piece because I knew I could mount one stud in that top hole, and then I could angle it however I wanted with just some tiles beneath it to keep it level. And it is a bit particular when you're putting it on. You do have to angle this bottom part slightly inward so we can tuck into this gap right here. Whenever I'm attaching these, I like to tuck in that bottom part first, and then I attach my stud up at the top after, and then it's all lined up just perfectly. But with that reattached, we'll go ahead and put on the side cannons one more time, and then we'll move around to the back side of the tank here. And on the backside, I unfortunately wasn't able to work in any interior space. I wanted to have some sort of back access door, but I wasn't able to do that. We actually have some Technic arms that hold the entire thing together going up right here. But I did try and build it up as best as I could and make it look proper with some plates and some tiles and a few cheese wedges in there. And then just at the bottom there, folding it up, we have that ladder piece that lays right on top for a little bit of extra detail added on top. And now with the entire middle portion of this tank covered, let's go ahead and move up and in between the two side cannons and we'll check out this top hatch. And unfortunately, I just lied to you guys because this actually isn't a top hatch. It just looks like it. I wasn't able to figure out a mechanism using the leftover pieces to allow this lid to fold open and close, but you can just remove the studs and then place your minifigures inside so it looks like they're peeking out of the top hatch. But as we move further along the top, just beyond that phony hatch, we have some larger slow pieces that help smooth the transition from the hatch into this larger defoliator weapon. And in this area, we obviously have the larger defoliator cannon on that right side, but then on that left side, we also have the technician or the gunner seat. And getting Mando out of there, we'll be able to get a better look inside. You can see he has two joysticks to aim and control the defoliator. And then just next to the joysticks, we have an extra canister of ammo to rapidly reload the defoliator in combat. And then of course next to that, we have the defoliator cannon itself. And on the back side of the cannon, you can see we have that red cylinder to represent the ammo canister, and then some miscellaneous detail and greebling on the back side of it. And then moving further down the cannon, you can see I had to use that large 2x6 tile to cover up that carbonite sticker. I ended up using the carbonite brick to help build up the main barrel of the cannon to make it quite a bit longer, but I knew I was going to have to cover up that sticker somehow because no matter what I did, it just wasn't going to fit at the top part of the cannon. So with a simple bracket at the top there, we can go ahead and slap on that leftover 2x6 tile, and now you can only see a tiny sliver of the print at the top there. And then just at the end of the carbonite brick, I've built up the muzzle of the defoliator cannon. I've used quite a bit of orange translucent studs in there to represent the power of the cannon and the type of ammo that it shoots, mainly being fire and explosive. And then hanging off the side right here, we actually have a holographic heads-up display. And I like to imagine that this display pops up something very similar to what you would see on grenade launchers in real life. Those taller rectangular iron sights that have the distances marked into them on the sides. I like to imagine that that gets projected from the top of this brick here so that your pilot can properly angle the cannon depending on where his target is. But that's pretty much it for the cannon itself. Just beyond that, we have a little bit more detail in the gunner seat to go over. We obviously covered all the controls and the extra ammo up at the front, but we didn't cover the backrest yet. And at the back is the backrest. This is where you would lean back to control the tank. But I tried to build it up as best as I could to make it a proper seat build and make it look semi-comfortable, using these slope pieces on either side with those grill pieces in the middle there. And then on the back side, I tried to build it up a little bit with these angled plates and then these vented cheese slopes on either side. But then besides that, we just have some extra pieces in here to help fill out this gap between the wedge plates that the seat leaves, using some larger slope pieces and then a bracket with a cheese wedge at the top. If you fold the seat back, now that gap in between is completely filled. And with the seat leaned back, we can go ahead and get our gunner back in there, and that pretty much covers the entire defoliator tank. This was a very fun and challenging alternate build, but I think I have a final product that I'm pretty happy with. Thank you to TPV for the initial suggestion of the AAT. I hope you don't mind that I twisted it a little bit into becoming the defoliator tank. And if you guys have any more alternate build ideas or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments down below, or if you're a patron, you can leave them on the linked Patreon post that I have down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on this alternate build down below, and if you want to build your very own Mandalorian Defoliator Tank, you can get instructions on my Patreon page right now. Other than that, I'll see you guys next time. Peace, fellas.